There is a handout on the back if you've come in late and you didn't realize there is, right on that table. And they're fill in the blanks if you want to get one. And they'll be on the screen, the blanks to fill in. Tonight we are talking about chapter 20 of the book of Revelation, specifically the Millennium, the 1,000-year reign that will happen on earth after the second coming of Christ. Pastor asked me to teach 1 week, but I need to talk to him about that because I'm not going to get done tonight. It's just, there's too much there, and I've chosen not to run over it. So if he doesn't want me to do it, then someday I'll catch up to you and we'll finish it, okay? That's the only way I could say. Because it'll be at least 2 weeks, obviously, before we get back together again. And so here, I want you to sing this song with me, will you? This is it. It's Christmas season, yes? Joy to the world, the Lord has come. What's the matter? Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. Repeat it. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the crown. The comes to make his blessings flow, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found, far as the curse is found. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love. We sing that every Christmas. Do you realize it's not a Christmas song? Look at the words. Joy to the world, the Lord has come. That's why we think about Christmas. We think about the incarnation, Jesus in the manger. But listen, let earth receive her King. You could put that. Let every heart prepare him room, and heaven and nature sing. That's good. Now listen to the next verse. No more let sins and sorrows grow, nor thorns infest the crown. When will that happen? Not at when Jesus is born, because sin was there, and the crown wasn't even there yet. The crown is what's going to be put on his head at Calvary. And the glories of his righteousness and the wonders of his love we can see in his life, but we can't see it in the world. We could pray for it, but it's not here. The God of this world today is Satan. And he still is in charge of the world. But we want Jesus to rule the world with truth and grace, and the only time that's going to happen is during the 10,000-year period we talk about. He is not ruling the world now. He is God, but Adam usurped the dominion of the earth to Satan when he sinned at the fall. And the millennium is about Jesus taking it back. The culmination of God's promise. And we can see the glory of his righteousness in the world for a 1,000-year period of time. He will rule righteously. There's no other way for Christ to rule, if you think about it. And we will see the wonders of his love. It's called the millennium because of the Latin word mille for 1,000, and so it's got the name the 1,000. So here's a kind of an overview of where we are in prophetic time. After the second coming starts a 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ on the earth. During that period of time, Satan, the Antichrist, and the beast will all be placed in the pit, a bottomless pit, or some translations call it the abyss, especially the King James, I believe, calls it the abyss. Satan, at the end of the millennium or during the millennium, it's really hard to track exactly which day it is, that kind of thing, will be brought back And there'll be one final revolt. I believe it's at the end of the millennium. And he will then be cast into his final place, the lake of fire. The bottomless pit and the lake of fire are two separate things. One is temporary, one is permanent. And immediately after he is put in the book of fire, in the lake of fire, the next verse says there's going to be a new heaven and new earth. So we also see finality. So the key events that happened during the millennium are these. Right after the second coming, this 1,000-year period of time, first of all, Satan is bound. These seem to be in the order that they're in the scriptures, and I'm going to just leave them like that. It's the easiest way to try to do it. The removal of the curse on the earth occurs during this period of time. Do you remember when the earth was cursed? Genesis chapter... Look up here. Here's the answer. Okay. Just giving you a hint. and Adam and Eve were cast out of the garden, and the part of the curse was about Eve, and part of the curse was on the earth. The earth has been under a curse, and the Bible teaches it groans every day to be out from under the curse. One day the earth will be during the millennium. Another thing that happens is Christ will sit on the throne that was promised to David back a long time ago, when David was promised that someone from your house will sit on the throne for eternity. Now we know that wasn't Solomon because he's not there now. He died. Then the millennial temple would be built. We're not going to even get to that, near it even today. But there's going to be another temple built during the millennium that will last possibly forever. No one's exactly sure. And there will be, in addition, there will be sacrifices during the millennium, which is interesting to me and maybe some other folks. The knowledge and glory of the Lord will dominate the world. In other words, instead of the world being run by unrighteousness like it is now, and that's not a political comment, that's a spiritual comment. Instead of the world being ruled by unrighteousness, it will be absolutely ruled by righteousness. And Satan will again have that revolt like we talked about, and then there'll be what's called the Great White Throne Judgment, where sin will be judged finally, not just ultimately, but finally, and there will be no more sin, period. It will be the end of the curse that was on Adam and sin in our presence. When we start the new heaven and earth, which is what the pastor is going to do, there will be no sin. I'll tell you how sinless it is. There's not even darkness there. It's all light, which just blows my mind. How am I going to see three-dimensionally if there's no shadow? I worry about that. So, here's an overview of the millennium, and this is a fill-in blank. This is what it'll look like, and when you see these yellow things come up, you put them in your little chart, and you'll keep up with me. Overview. God will restore that which sin is defiled. From the moment that Adam sinned, the earth has been defiled because of sin. And that makes sense to me because the gift of sin, or the wages of sin, is death. Death entered the world. Until the fall, death was not, I'm not saying planned, but death was not experienced. As far as I know, by anything. We don't have any evidence of death before that. But we know that when sin occurred, death reigned, and it wasn't the law that caused it. Do you remember Paul wrote that it wasn't the law that caused sin, because we know that sin was available because people died before the law. So we know that sin was in the world, and it's not the law that points out sin. That is a very important point eventually in your life. The righteousness of God will be vindicated and displayed. All of this time, for thousands of years, people have been saying things about God. He doesn't exist. You know, all of the anti-God things, you know, God was dead for a while, if you remember that. And all of those kind of things. His righteousness will be vindicated. He'll be seen for who he is. And his faithfulness and righteousness will be displayed. In fact, when you think of the time span between the Garden of Eden and the millennium, you will see a very patient God who will do that. Now, one day I said this at Texaco, and a lady went home and cross-stitched it and gave it to me. One of my kids took it. If you have kids, you have stuff all over the world. Do you realize that? They just take it like it's theirs or something. It said, never confuse God's patience with his permission. He is a very patient God, but what he promises will come true. If it's bad from the beginning, it will be bad at the end. His promises will be fulfilled. That's what we're talking about. And humans have been longing for justice, it seems, forever. And one day, that justice and peace will be here. One day, people who are walking on the face of the earth will actually be able to walk in peace. I don't know how accurate this is because I didn't have the time or, to be honest, the desire to see how accurate it is. But I was looking on the web the other day about war. I was just studying about war, because I thought about the song where we'll study war no more. And I thought, well, let me study war, so I could say I'm not going to study it anymore. I have no idea why I even thought of that, but I did. And this is what it said on this article I was reading. In all of time recorded, there have only been less than 500 years where a war was not taking place. There's always been war. I don't know about that, but I can tell you this. When I was in Vietnam on the second all-paid expense vacation God gave me, I was talking to a little boy that was there on the base, and I said, what will you do after the war when there's peace? And he said, what is peace? And I tried to explain to him what is peace, and I realized, before this there was French Indochina. Before that, the Boer Wars, all of those kinds of things that he had never, ever known peace in his life. But do you know one day people are going to walk the face of this earth in absolute peace? Now, if you can fathom that in your mind, you're doing fine. I just can't. So what's the nature? If we're going to make a telescopic view of the millennium, what would I say the nature of it would be? And these are some ideas that I have. Number one, it'll be a time of peace. Zechariah, the prophet, prophesied that. And so did Isaiah. You do not have this, I don't think, in your notes. There will be fullness of joy. And the reason is I put it in late this afternoon. Fullness of joy, a distinctive mark of that age. People will actually have joy in their life. A theocratic kingdom, theos is the word for God. Theocratic would mean God in charge. So a theocratic kingdom, instead of now politics, polis is the word for people. Instead of people being in charge, God will be in charge. Holiness will be manifested through the king instead of what the people wanted. It'll be a glorious time. Justice will be done because the king righteously judges. There are no spins, there are no private interest groups or any things that we talk about today. There's no economic injustice. All the things we live under today will not exist, which is almost utopian, isn't it, to think about? The fullness of knowledge of God, it says the knowledge of God is spread throughout the earth. And that's one of the reasons it seems like there'll be unrestricted Holy Spirit teaching. The people on this earth will still have to have a need for learning. And if we get to that now, if not, it'll be next time. The removal of the curse produces, the earth all of a sudden can produce the way it was supposed to produce. There'll be no weeds to inhibit growth. There'll be no thorns, all of those kind of things, the things in our life that keep things from growing the way it's supposed to. The earth will be watered when as it's supposed to be. I'm not sure about the rain and the waters from beneath. I don't know. And we'll all worship the same person the same way. The manifest presence of God will be easily seen. And the fullness of the Spirit will be able to see that. So I say that for that, and this is on your chart, on your handout. I think of the fullness of I think of the millennium as the completing of all of God's promises and all of everything we've studied in the Bible someone is starting to draw the string so the purse can be closed and everything can be seen. All the things we wonder about, all those answers will occur. It will bring about this. So the very first thing that happens in chapter 20 is, and I saw an angel coming down from heaven, one angel, having a key to the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand, and he laid hold of the dragon and the serpent, who was the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, cast him into the pit, shut him up, set a seal on him. Why? So he should not deceive the nations no more, till the 1,000 years were finished. And then after these things, he'll be released for a while. One angel, the Satan, everybody's talking about how powerful he is. One angel will put him in chains, throw him in the pit, and nothing that Satan's going to do will stop that from happening. I make a point of that because a few years ago, don't ask me the few, like if I say the other day, it means in my lifetime. You know what I mean? I'm not good at that. There was a thing that was taught in the series of books called, I don't remember what they were called, but I think it was Frank Peretti that wrote them, about how there's this cosmic battle going on in the heavenlies, and God's angels and Satan's demons are fighting one with another, and there's guys down on the ground. A pastor in this group were praying. When they prayed hard, God's people won. When they didn't, Satan's people won, and the battle was for the town, and there was something like that in every town. We had people in towns getting prayer groups together so that God might win. Can I help you with that? He won from the beginning. And the reason he won is this. He and Satan are not equals. Satan is not the opposite of God. If God has an opposite, it would be pure evil. But he is so God, I'm not sure there is an opposite. I know that's a contradiction in terms, but there is not. And the reason I know that is God is omnipotent. Satan does not have all power. He can only do what God allows him. Isn't that what we found out in the book of Job? Satan is not everywhere. He's not omnipresent. In fact, every once in a while someone will say, man, Satan was at my house this week. I say, praise the Lord. And they go, what? And I say, well, see, if he's at your house, he won't be at my house. Because he can't be everywhere. I don't know how many angels there are that are now demons, his followers. Some of those have been at my house, and I've pastored a few of them. But the fact of the matter is, Satan is not equal with God in omnipresence, omni meaning everywhere. Neither is he omniscient. Satan does not know everything. Obviously, the Bible teaches he doesn't know when God's coming back. He only knows, in a way, what we tell him. So one of the things I don't go around saying is, oh God, I hope my truck doesn't break. Because I feel like there's somebody following me around. Truck break. We'll see if I can fix that up. I know don't bother. Don't take notes on that. So, but why is he being in the pit? Look, here's the problem. People say, well, why is he in there and not in there? And I think if you'll just stay and let the thought train out in your mind, you understand? Not just a single thought, but let it grow. God is going to allow the world to experience a time when nothing forces them to sin. No temptation. No lies. No deception. And would you be shocked to know that there still will be sin during the millennium? See, but we always are blaming. You remember Flip Wilson? The devil made me do it. I mean, Adam, it started as old as the garden, right? What did Adam say? It's your fault, God. You gave me her. If you're a better picker of woman, I wouldn't have sinned. Which any female knows that's not true. Us men are still having trouble with that, but any female knows that's not true. So, the first thing that I want to tell you is, talk about is this. God created the earth to bless man. God created the earth to be exactly what the creation that he was going to create needed to exist. It is not a shock to me that our atmosphere is exactly what man needs. And some people see, well, God had to do that because he created the atmosphere. I think he's smarter than that. I really do. I really think that specific design requires specific creation, and a specific or intelligent creation requires an intelligent creator. And I believe he knew what he was going to create. And so he made man perfect to fit the environment that he created, which was perfect for the one he was going to create. And now it's not. Oh, we can still breathe. Gravity still holds us down. The earth is still slanted so we don't burn up part of the year in the sense of not being able to live because of the way we face the sun. Everything is perfect in what we have for mankind, and they've never found yet, not even all the Milky Way or all the hundreds of Milky Ways that exist. Never once found anything that's even close to being what man needs. I think that's why they have spacesuits. But mankind is here, and he can live like that, and God wants to bring back the earth to its original state. And when he takes the curse off the earth, it will be restored for its rightful order, which was interrupted when sin entered the earth. The curse we see every day. We experience every day. And here are a few scriptures that I want to show you to do that. In Ezekiel, the prophet wrote in Ezekiel 35:36, "They will say of this desolate land, it becomes like the Garden of Eden. And the waste, desolate, ruined cities are fortified inhabitants." There's a way to interpret prophecy that is immediate and a fore-prophecy. This is one of the prophecies that you could see immediately in the sense that Israel, God's land, now has been, some of the desert have been converted to some of the most profitable farmland on the face of the earth. And the other part is that we will have, one day, we will see all of the earth like that. We will see every bit of it like that. So, and then Isaiah wrote, "Indeed, the Lord will comfort Zion." That's the area of Jerusalem, or those mountains. It says, "He will comfort all of her waste places, and her wilderness he will make like Eden, and her deserts like the Garden of Eden, and the gladness will be found in her, thanksgiving, the sound of melody." The earth right now that is infested with thorns and all of the results of the curse will one day be a place where it is absolutely fruitful. And it's a wonderful place in that sense. And Jesus Christ will take his rightful throne as the ruler of the earth. He will be on the throne. Not just deserving of the throne, he will be on the throne as king. You see, the first Adam was created in absolute innocence, in an absolute perfect environment. But the kingdom will even be better than the Garden of Eden was. And the reason is that also in the perfect environment, there'll be absolute righteousness. There will be no snake to say, "Why don't you eat that? Why don't you disobey God?" So not only is it there, it's sort of like the Garden of Eden on steroids. I mean, there's nothing that's going to be there to make man want to do something that's not right. Now the millennium has a purpose, I see. And the purpose, this is not in your work. The purpose is, number one, to fulfill 3 important covenants that are on the earth. Now a covenant is not a contract. A contract is based on distrust. Some of you who are in business have contracts. And the contract is built like you're expecting someone not to do the service. Or someone is wondering if you are going to do the service. So you have a contract. If they default, then there's a penalty. But covenants are based on trust by the covenant initiator. That's why I'm convinced that marriage is not a contract. It should be a covenant. 2 people who make a covenant with each other. It's based on mutual trust. We shouldn't get married expecting to be divorced. It's not the right way to think about it. And so the covenants that God made with Noah, the covenants that God made with Adam, the covenants that God made with the other people in our world are all similar. They are all based on God. He is always the covenant initiator, never man. The covenant lasts as long as the initiator is alive. He's not going to die. And it's always based on his veracity. And he is trustable. He is holy. He cannot not. So to Abraham, God said, I will make you a nation, and in you I will bless the people of the earth. And there are two promises, major promises, in the Abrahamic covenant. That's the way you'd say it. One is that his seed would become a mighty nation. He said that to a man who had no children and couldn't have children. And secondly, he said someday that seed would own Palestine. Now, again, I've said this 3 or 4 times. I'm going to say it until everybody understands it. The Palestinians today are not the Palestine that talks about in the Bible. They are a different group of people. Palestine in the Bible was named by Rome to throw into the face of Israel the Philistines. That's where the original portions of the land was, and Rome is the one who's called it Palestine when the Jews and the Philistines were living in the land. The Palestinians today are Arabic, and we're not living in the land when they say that they could say this was our land. Now, did they ever live there? Yes. When Muhammad came through there. That is not the beginning of the world. Neither is it Old Testament. So, when you hear that argument on TV, let your brain work at that point. I'm probably saying that as a Jew, I understand. But the purpose of millennium, the second purpose, the second major covenant is the Davidic covenant, the one that he made with David. And he said to David 3 promises. Number 1, that you would have an everlasting throne. He said that to him. We see it in Luke. We see it that Jesus is going to take the throne of David. We see in Zechariah that he's going to do that, and in Philippians and in Revelation, and that he would have not just an everlasting throne, but it would be an everlasting kingdom. Obviously, he's not talking about David's kingdom or Solomon's kingdom or any of that kingdom, because that kingdom is gone. And that he would be an everlasting king, one who never dies. And so the issue is, when does the Davidic covenant reach its climax? Or did God just ignore it? And the answer is, during the millennium. When Jesus, from the throne of David, becomes king. Have you ever wondered why Matthew especially takes so much time to show you that Jesus is a descendant of David? Because that's who the Jews are expecting to be the king. In fact, Luke does too, but he does it from a little different point of view. To demonstrate that Jesus is of the line and lineage of David. And Mary is, by the way, also, by the way, if you want to look at it from 2 sides. And so, the third covenant is what we call the New Covenant, the New Testament covenant. But predicted or prophesied in Jeremiah 31, he says, I'll put a new covenant in your heart. And that's going to happen at the millennium. We see it brought in Jesus Christ. That's the now, or the past. But the future is when he'll actually be on the throne. Right now, he is on the throne of our heart. Well, right now he should be on the throne of our heart. I'll say it that way. We should have that relationship with him. And look at the promises of the new covenant. They're not so much about land, but rather he will forgive their iniquity and forget their sin. And we're taught even elsewhere in the Bible that he will separate our sin as far as the east is from the west. I love that. I mean, look, in north, you can go north until you can't go north anymore. Do you realize that? From the North Pole, the only place you can go is south. Or south that way too. But if you keep on going east, you will run out of gas and still be going east. In a way, you never start going west, even though you get west. And if I'm separated as far as the east is from the west, and they don't meet, I'm good. Corey Ten Boom, who came to eat at our house one time, in our backyard, and she said, God put my sins in the sea and stuck up a no fishing sign. He wants to give us a new heart. A new heart I will place in you, to replace your heart of stone. And not only that, he will use Israel to reach the Gentiles. Very clear. And does it surprise you that Jesus said, I came to the Jew first? Not in quantity and value, but in order. Because God wanted to use the Jews to spread the gospel to the Gentiles. And some of the Jews never quite got it. They thought you had to become Jewish. But God just wanted to spread the gospel using his people, his chosen nation. And they didn't. They refused him. And that's why, do you remember we studied the tribulation? That's what the tribulation is about, to bring Israel back to God, to bring his nation back. And now he's going to cleanse out the rest of the ones in that nation who didn't quite ever make the commitment. And we'll see that as we go through this. You see, man's purpose and destiny was to be realized. What did God say to Adam and Eve? You are created in my image, male and female. Next verse. And to them he gave dominion over the earth. Adam was not to give up his authority over the earth. He was to have authority over every part of the earth, mankind. But mankind doesn't. And during the millennium, that will be reversed. The forfeit will be done. You see, the first Adam was disobedient. The second Adam, Jesus Christ, was obedient unto death. The first Adam did what he thought he wanted to do. The second Adam only obeyed what his father said. The first Adam was more concerned about he and his relationship with his wife, I guess. The second Adam was more interested in his relationship with his father. So the second Adam will restore mankind to dominion, and we will learn later, we will even judge with him. That's how much restored to dominion we'll be. It doesn't surprise me when he says we will one day reign with him and judge with him, because it was his concept that was going to be the way it was at the beginning. And so that's one of the reasons you have to kind of slow down. It will be the fulfillment of the promise of the land. Israel was promised to Abraham land that they have never, ever yet achieved. They would have to have from the Euphrates River in the north all the way to the Mediterranean, all the way to above Mount Hermon in the Euphrates River to the northeast, Mount Hermon to the north, the Mediterranean to the west, and all the way down to the river in Egypt, and nobody knows exactly where that is, but I don't think it's the Nile River. I think it's the major tributary that goes into the Mediterranean just above there. They've never owned all that land. Even during the Six-Day War, when they won a great portion of Syria and all of those places that they had to give back, they still didn't have all that land. And either God made a promise that he couldn't keep, or Israel will have that land one day. That's your choice to think. But I believe he's faithful to his promises. And one day Israel will have that land, physically. I don't see this as allegorical, like they'll have a land. I think it is literal. They will own their land one day, because Amos the prophet said, one day you will. Israel will have its rightful king. There have been many kings over Israel, but the one that God wanted all along was one from the throne of David, who will be Israel's king. You see that, by the way, in his birth. Have you ever really looked at some of those Christmas narratives like this one? You, O Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders, for out of you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. He's talking about the baby, Jesus the baby. We are taught in Luke. But the citizens said, hey, we don't want, the people that knew Jesus said, we don't want any part of that. We don't want him as a ruler. And he actually told a parable about that, to where a father sent his son to the landholder and they killed his son. because they didn't want the Father or his Son. And the landholders are a picture of Israel, and the Son is a picture of Jesus, and the Father is a picture of God. I wouldn't probably so tritely say there wasn't any room for him in the inn even. The world has never had room for Jesus and doesn't want Jesus. And why should we go around the world expecting the world to accept Jesus when the world hates everything about it? So sometimes people say, well, I witnessed to that person. They didn't get saved. I want to go, and? Witness again. Do you really expect everybody that you witness to be saved? Really? Do you really think I think that everybody I preach to is going to come to Christ or change their life or even listen? No. No is the answer. Anybody that's known me more than 2 months have heard me say this. Never be surprised when the lost act lost. Never. Because that's what lost people do. Why would you expect your lost boss to treat you like a Christian would? That's as silly as asking me to run a 3-minute mile. That's why I bought a car. I'm not planning to run a 3-minute mile. I'm not sure I could run a 3-minute walk halfway down the block. So one day Israel's going to have his king. You see, God promised David that his throne would last forever. Look what it says in Isaiah 2. Jesus' rule will be a righteous dictatorship. He's going to be so righteous, and no one can do anything except what he says righteously. Now, that makes me understand that some people are going to say, I don't want to do that, or else the Bible wouldn't bring it up. It says here, now it will come about in the last days, the mountain of the house of the Lord will be established in the chief of the mountains, that's Zion, and will be raised above the hills, and all the nations will stream to it. One day, Jerusalem's going to be the capital of the world. One day, Jerusalem will be the capital of the world because that's where Jesus' throne will be. And one day, all of the eyes of the world will be put on Jerusalem. In a way, isn't that strange that almost all of the eyes of the world are on that area now anyway, and have been for years? You will say, what is so important about that little? Do you understand? All of Israel is less than 150 miles long. If you were on the Dead Sea and drove north to go to the Sea of Galilee, it is further than from here. It is closer than from here to Lubbock. Israel at its widest place is 60 miles. In some places now, because Israel had to give land, it's only 14 miles across. That's like from here to Portales. We're not talking about a big land. And one day that little teeny land, isn't it strange that God would pick something so small and minuscule to amaze the world? Don't do like this because he picked you. Yeah? You see, but sin will still be brewing in people's hearts. Please think this through with me. And there's another slide about it much later. Who goes into the millennium? Somebody tell me. Who? Who are the people that will go into the millennium?
The ones that have been saved during the tribulation that didn't take the mark.
That weren't raptured, that were saved during the tribulation. Are they saved or lost? Are they saved as the church people? No, listen to the sentence. Are they as saved as church people? Yeah, if you're saved, thank you. Hey, say that again. That's so simple. If you're saved, you're saved. You can't be sort of saved, and you can't be almost saved. You're either saved or you're not. Everybody that goes in the millennium, either they come back with Jesus, that'd be the church and the people who died, come back with Jesus, right? Are they saved or lost? Saved. The people that come through the tribulation are saved, right? So who lives on the millennium at the beginning? Nothing but saved people. So where does sin come from? Man's heart is exceedingly evil. Even the children of saved people? You said, listen, the people that come out from the tribulation are going to have physical bodies. The people who come back with Jesus are going to have spiritual bodies. People who are in heaven don't have children. We'll be like the angels. I didn't say we'd be an angel. I said we'll be like the angels who don't marry and don't have children. So the only people who could reproduce are the people that come out of the tribulation. They have seen hell come through the tribulation. Now they're in a place where there's going to be absolute happiness. No more death, no more dying, no more seas turning to blood, no more things falling from the sky and killing people. All of those people are absolutely safe, and those people will still neglect to choose Jesus. Why? Because their hearts are evil. And you know what the millennium proves? That all this stuff about, well, somebody made me do it, the devil made me do it, somebody made me sin, is a bunch of malarkey. It comes right from people's heart, and God is demonstrating that for 1,000 years. There is no reason to sin in the millennium except to choose against God. And there's going to be so many of them that choose against God that Satan will have a mighty army. See, his army has already been destroyed at Armageddon, right? He will have a mighty army. Now, I don't know how many people can be created over 1,000 years because I don't know the beginning figure. You understand? If it's 2, you got a chance of maybe figuring it out. But how many come out? I don't have any idea. But there's going to be a lot of people. And some of those people will not choose Jesus, even though there's no temptation, no lying, no deception, no one be tricked. There's no demonic activity around. It's all been taken care of. All those things are locked up in the pit so that they can't deceive the nations. And still the nations will choose against God. There will be people born during the millennium from the tribulation survivors. Not from the people that come back with Jesus. Please hear that. From the tribulation. They will choose to reject Jesus as king, as leader, and refuse to go worship him. In fact, Zechariah prophesies that they will die because they will not worship Jesus. They turn Jesus down. So some of the people enter him. And it says, look, and it will come that day, about that day, who are left of all the nations went up to Jerusalem, will go year by year to worship the king. In other words, everybody that comes out of the tribulation at first will go up year by year. It doesn't matter what nation they came from, what they used to worship, what used to be their bent, all of those things, their ethnic values, all that stuff is going to be gone because Jesus will be the point of worship. But by the end of the millennium, like the sound of the sea, there'll be so many who don't worship Jesus. The citizens of the millennium, so again, how do lost people get there? Well, at the second coming, only sheep and believers enter the kingdom, and the goats and the unbelievers are cast out. So at the end of the reign, Satan comes. Obviously, there's lost people in the millennium. There's no other way you can do that and understand it. So they will be born again out of these people who are not the resurrected people. But I wanted to put this slide up for you because I wanted you to see this, and I know it's not on your notes, but I just added it this afternoon while I was working. Some people say, remember when at the beginning of this, I was trying to explain the different views towards the millennium and the rapture when they happen. Some people think the rapture happens at the beginning of the tribulation. Some think it happens at the end. Some people think it happens just before the millennium. Well, if the second coming and the rapture, some people are amillennial, they don't think it's going to happen, that the rapture and the second coming are the same or right after each other. If that would happen, who would be there to populate the earth? If all the people that were saved are taken out and Jesus comes back like the next day, who's going to have a baby overnight for Satan to have an army? It can't happen. That's why I know there must be separated by time, enough time to have a great army. One of the reasons I believe there's going to be a millennium is the things that were prophesied can't come true unless there is. Unless God does, now God could do whatever God wanted to do, and I'll stick that in there. If he wanted to create 50 million people to just snap his finger or speak a word, there it is. But there's got to be a time between the rapture when the saints are taken out And this other time when people who are not resurrected with non-resurrected bodies come to the earth to be able to have children, so that during the last revolt of Satan there'd be an army there. Because it's not a demonic army. The Antichrist and the beast are in the pit. And so is Satan in the pit. So, as beautiful as the millennium is, it's not heaven. Sin will still be possible there. It's very clear that sin will be possible there. Certain families and certain nations will refuse to go up there. We talked about that. Such deeds are more inexcusable because the tempter will be absent. In other words, they will stand before God without any excuse. And they will not last. They will die. So how about the church in the millennium? Let's start that. You have that, I believe, in your handout. So, the church in the millennium. During the millennium, Jesus will go for his bride. Now, Pastor talked about that just very little bit last week, and I just wanted to not do a better job than him. That's not the reason I'm doing it. I just wanted to put the whole picture together with what I was teaching tonight so you could see better. In an Oriental wedding, you could say a Jewish wedding, but it's true in other cultures, there are 3 stages to the marriage process. The first stage has 2 parts. The bride is picked and a dowry is paid. My grandparents had an arranged marriage. Their marriage was arranged 5 years before they were married, and the first day they met each other was when they applied for their wedding license. And they fell in love and obviously had a wonderful family. So the father picks the bride. In many cultures today, the father still picks the bride because fathers know best. The dowry is paid, and that happens, and that is where we are in our present day if you want to apply this to Christians. The next part that happens is the young man goes home to build a house for his new wife and family. The father must okay the house before he goes to get the bride, because fathers know best. Some of these guys have put up a cardboard shack, go get the girl. And then the marriage service itself happens. That's what happened during the rapture, when the father said to the son, go get your bride. And the bride is taken away. And then the marriage supper begins, and then the consummation of the marriage. The last stage, that's what we're waiting for. So, but the Bible talks about there's going to be guests at the bride in Revelations 19. People ask me who that is. I believe that it's not the church. They're the bridegroom. They're the bride. The bride is never going to be the guest. So they must be, by default, all the believing Gentiles, provided who were saved before Pentecost or after the rapture. Or possibly in between. I'm not so sure that they can't be saved in between. But they would be part of the church if they were saved after Pentecost and before the rapture. And converted Israelites everywhere. The bride of the marriage is found in you'll see it in 1 Corinthians 11:2 is the best place. The church is the bride of Christ. In Ephesians, it talks about that husbands ought to love their wife like Christ loves the church, his bride. So we understand who the bride is. That's an easiest one. But then the selection of the bride is important. The father must choose. Now look at Ephesians chapter 1, 3, and 4. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in heavenly places, who, in Christ, just as he chose us in him before the foundation of the world. Listen, church, do you know when you were chosen as the bride? Not when he saw how you were going to turn out. Before there was a world. And that's back to that election free will thing that I certainly don't have time to go into that, because I'll never understand it. All I know is he has to choose you and you have to say yes. They're both right. But the fact is, we were chosen so we would be, listen, an unspotted bride. Jesus doesn't want to come back, if you'll let me say it, because it's a Bible word, King James, for those who are whoring around. He wants us to be pure. And so pure are we were chosen before we were. Then the dowry has to be paid. Well, think of what it says in 1 Corinthians. Do you realize that you are not your own? Do you understand? You're not your own. Your body is a temple of God. The Holy Spirit living in you. And God is the reason that that's true. And you have been bought with a price. Do you understand the price? Read it in Peter. Knowing that you were redeemed not with perishable things like silver and gold. That's just earthly junk. You were redeemed with something much more. Your dowry was the precious blood of Jesus Christ. That's how valuable you are to God. Now, I don't know about you, but I buy stuff. We have more junk in our house than the law allows. When you have to build a room to put your junk, you've got too much junk. Or rent one. Whatever it is. I'm not starting any family stuff. I'll get off that real fast. Look, the truth of the matter is that God, when I buy something, I look at the value of it, and when a guy asks me for more money than I consider the value, I say the price is too high. Now he doesn't. He's trying to sell it for that price. I say the price is too high. But when I think of what God paid for me, my first thought is I know the price was too high. But I'm not the one setting the price. God set the price and then paid it. Remember we used to sing that song years ago? We owed a debt we couldn't pay. He paid a debt he didn't owe. Remember that? I needed someone to wash my sins away, but now I sing a brand new song. Amazing grace. Joy to the world. Jesus came. And he is coming. It's the now and not yet. I'm sorry, I get excited about that. So, here's quick. Give me 2 slides, okay?
Preach on, brother.
No, that is the worst thing you could ever tell me. You never say sick 'em to a dog that has you by the leg. Ever. I could just do this all night, I'm sorry. So in the beginning, the Father makes the choice, and here's the application to us. Christ the bridegroom, we're the bride. The Father makes and approves the choice. John the Baptist, if you read the book of John very carefully, he is the bridegroom. The best man, sorry. He's the one that's going to stay. He's the friend of the groom. Remember he said, I'm not the groom, I'm the friend of the groom. John the Baptist is going to be the best man at the wedding. And then here's the groom's promise. The groom makes a covenant. Or some people want to insist it's a contract. I still see it as a covenant. The groom pays the price to show that he's serious. Do you remember even in the story of Samson when he went down and put a deposit on his wife and then left and then came back and she had been plowing with someone else's heifer? Or the men around her were. And so he drinks a cup of wine to seal the covenant. Do you remember during the Passover, or I'll say it, the Lord's Supper, you'll be able to understand it better. Jesus takes the cup and he says, I will drink this cup with you now, but I what? Will never drink it again until we meet in glory at the marriage supper of the Lamb. In a Jewish wedding, you would go, you drink the cup, you put it on the ground, and actually nowadays they wrap it in a rag so it doesn't get all over everything, and they crush the glass, meaning, I'll never do this again. You're my wife. There's no plan to have another cup with another lady. Under the chuppah, the little umbrella-looking thing. And what's that mean to me then? What does that mean to Joel as I live my life today? God made a new covenant with Israel to replace the one he made with Abraham. By the way, God made a covenant with me too. Jesus paid the price on the cross. For me, I'm the bride. He's meeting the demands of the Father. The Father is the one who sets the dowry. He does that. And so therefore, I have the responsibility to not just understand that, but you remember, it's the groom who prepares the place for the bride. This is where I'm living today. He goes home, and makes a bridal chamber, not just a house, but they make a place where they will stay for a week. And they will start their marriage together in a week. Actually, what happens is you have the ceremony, you go to this place, and the party starts. You're not part of the party. You go there for a week. You spend time. In fact, in the older Jewish community, you weren't even allowed to go to war or be in the army for a year. You spent your time with your wife to do that. You know, God did that for Crystal and I. We were married on Christmas Day. The next day, I started pastoring at Dora. Both streets of the town. We were alone. I mean, alone. And then the people said, we don't want you to visit. We want you to study and preach. Minister to us when we need ministering, but you don't have to come out in the field and stop us from plowing or baling or whatever they were doing. You just stay where you are and be with your new wife. And I said, thank you very much. I did that well. Nobody bothered us. We had a chance to start our life together in real life, but yet without all the other detractions. I believe it's why we have a better marriage today. I will always believe that. We started right. Now, besides, I married the perfect woman. Isn't that what you told me? Did I say that the way you wanted me to? Oh, Daniel told you. By the way, that is our daughter, Carol, and her husband, Daniel Howard, visiting from Fort Worth. They thought they'd come back to be in civilization for a while. And so his dad and mom used to go to this church years ago. And his cousin grew up. Application to us Christians. What does that mean? And I'll stop here. Jesus tells us that he doesn't know when he comes. Only the Father knows. What's he doing now? Building us a place. A carpenter working for 1,000 years on a place. By the way, we sing, we're going to have a mansion next door to Jesus. The word is apartment. It means dwelling place. It doesn't mean mansion. But if he does it, it'll be a mansion. You understand? From my perspective. For all, he's preparing a place now. So what do I have to be on alert for? Number one, don't worship idols. Don't let idols in my life. Number two, be ready. Be ready like he's coming tomorrow, tonight, right now. Be ready. Develop an active prayer life so you can have communication with him. Because when you get right down to us, we only have one command. Make disciples. If you don't have a good relationship with him in prayer, when do you ever get the command to you? When do you ever hear it? When someone else says it, it's one thing. When God tells you, it's something totally different. And we ought to offer ourselves for ministry. Do you know how many things are going on, not just in our church, but in the world, where all of us could minister? And you want to hear the tragedy of it? Less than 4% of the average church actually minister. Less than 4%. That's known. Now, people may be out there doing it on their own and not saying anything, so they wouldn't be obviously counted. But even in polls, less than 4% of the actual church just ministers to people. Because ministering is more than putting $1 in the plate. That's part of ministry. But it's not all of ministry. And there are people in this world that want your ministry. I promise. There are people in this world who want your ministry. That's the way we keep the bride unspotted and pure. Ministering to each other, confessing our sins to each other, working with each other, having relationships with each other, and last, keep ourselves from doubt and failure. All of us are going to fall. If you hang around me very often, you will notice I make way more mistakes than you would ever guess that I make. And I do many more things that I shouldn't, that I have to confess. My favorite verse is 1 John 1:9. That if I'll confess my sins, he's faithful and just to forgive me my sins and cleanse me from all unrighteousness. I pray it every day of my life. Every day I have to say I'm sorry. But that is not going to stop me from trying. I do stumble, but you have to get up. Sometimes the word is hard. Sometimes the work is hard, or sometimes it's complicated, but you can't quit. It's too soon to quit. And I'm speaking more to you that are my age than anybody else. We say, well, I've done mine. It's time for me to quit. Listen, if that were true, you'd be flat under the ground in your body, and you'd be up there rejoicing in heaven. The proof that you're still here means God still has something for you. And my goal for you would be to minister. At whatever level you can, however you can, with whatever gift God's given you. Because we are the bride. And when he comes back, I don't want him to look for a dress that's got spots all over it. I want to be a shiny bride. Father, I just come before you and I say this morning to you, God, use me today, and I thank you because I believe you have today. I came tonight and said, Lord, show me things I don't even remember, things I don't know. And I believe you've ministered to us today. You sure have ministered to me, Father. And so, Lord, I ask that we'd take this teaching and put it in our heart, and we'd start living like you're actually coming. And start praying like we're actually excited about it. And start studying so we could tell. And start ministering so we could understand what it is like. Lord, I don't know what heaven's like. Not exactly. But all I know is that I believe in my heart that if I live the way you want me to live, I can experience a little bit of what heaven's going to be like here. Teach me, Father, to be obedient to you. Remind me when I'm not. And oh God, whatever you do, please don't take your hand off of me. And I ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Thanks for coming.